welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. I'm your host, Uncivil Law. And I just wanted to hang out and chill, and I thought one of the ways we would do that today is by reading and discussing at least part of the Tao Te Ching, one of the greatest books ever written. It's by Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher. And it's been said that it is one of the most widely translated books in the world after the Bible. And at least in this preface it says there's no less than 100 translations into English alone. So that's pretty interesting. And I thought we could read this and discuss some of what it has to teach us, or what it has to share with us. So we're going to read some of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu and discuss it. It has 81 verses, or 81 chapters. The chapters are short. It's a very short book, but it has a lot of interesting things in it. And I thought we could read it and discuss it, so we'll do that. Chapter 1. The Tao that can be discussed is not really the Tao. Things in the world are only temporary reflections of the Tao. The flow of the Tao is all that really exists. Only language and beliefs and categories are only fabrications which helps us make sense of its flow. In order to understand this, one first has to learn how to relax. In order to experience this, one first has to learn how to unlearn. The world is made of the Tao, and Tao is evidenced by the workings of the world. Tao and the world may seem separate, but that's only because we're hardwired to see it that way. To operate in greater harmony with the world, we must internalize this way and its perspective. So, the first thing that the book says right off the top, the first line is one of the most powerful lines that's ever written in philosophy. And because it sort of admits to its own inability to be discussed on some level, by saying the Tao that can be discussed is not really the Tao. So this reminds me of the famous painting of the pipe, and it's written in French, and under the picture of the pipe it says, "This is not a pipe," because what it's trying to illustrate is that there's a difference between the image of the thing and the thing. It's like the idea is that the map is not the territory, right? There's this old that the map to explore the thing is not the same thing as the thing. So it's a really interesting idea. There was a sort of an old story of a prince who wants to understand his land that he's just become a prince of. And so he goes to a map maker and says, "Make me a map of my land." And so the map maker goes away and comes back to him with a map. And the prince says, "There's not enough detail in it. It's not detailed enough. Make it better." And so the map maker goes away and, makes a piece of paper that's, 4 times the size of, the map that it was before, and, draws in more features and more things and more detail. And the prince says, "It's still not detailed enough. Make me a more detail to the map." So the cartographer goes away, and he starts drawing on the wall of the palace. He starts drawing on this huge wall a map of the land. And he starts drawing in the mountains, and starts drawing in the peaks, and drawing in the trees, and drawing in the rivers, and drawing in the details of everything, in sort of fine detail. And the prince says, "It's still not detailed enough." And the end of the story is that the map maker just makes a map that's as big as the territory, because it will describe everything. And even then, even if you were to do that, the map would still not be the territory. Even if you had a map that perfectly replicated the territory, it would still not be the same thing as a territory. It would only be It would only be a representative of the territory. It wouldn't be the same thing as the territory itself. And so the book starts with the idea that this thing that we're trying to discuss is not really the thing. Because we're trying to reduce the thing into words and language and imagery and conception that we might be able to understand, but it is fundamentally not the thing. And this sort of makes sense if you think about really just sort of any object in the world. Like, no matter how much you describe something, no matter how much description you have of something, no matter how detailed your description is, there is something different about the thing itself on a fundamental level that has to be understood. That if it is to be understood at all, can only be understood by the thing. And even then, maybe it's still not. Even then, like, to experience the thing is not the same thing as the thing. So, this idea that the Tao that can be discussed is not really the Tao. Things in the world are only reflections of the Tao, is a conception that reality, that even the world around us, that even our perceptions are not the same thing as reality, which kind of makes sense because my eyes that can see are still not, and my brain that can perceive are still not truly experiencing the world in some sense. Not for the least of reasons that my eyes are not perfect. And different animals have different kinds of eyes that can see different things. And I can't see parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, for example. That all my senses and my ability to perceive the world is still not the same thing as the world. There's sort of there's a disconnect there. And he says, our language and beliefs and categories are only fabrications which help us make sense of its flow. It's ultimately a reductive expression of the thing. And I think that this makes sense on a lot of levels. It's like reality is beyond our ability to perceive it. Reality is beyond our ability to fully understand it. And our language is inadequate to fully conceptualize whatever it is. He says, in order to understand this, we must have to learn how to relax. To experience it, we have to learn how to unlearn. So it is not as much an intellectual exercise as an experience exercise. So the very fact that we're like having this discussion is in some sense a betrayal of what it is. There is no substitute for experiencing it. To experience it is different than the descriptor of it. And then he says, Tao and the world may seem different, but that's only because we're hardwired to see it that way. Because our minds and our senses are meant to perceive the world in a pragmatic sense. They're meant to understand reality so that we can move through it, but not really fully understand reality. It's one of the reasons that, for example, quantum mechanics has been so notoriously difficult to describe, because we don't live in it. So it's something that's very difficult for us to understand and conceptualize. And ultimately says to internalize, to operate with harmony, we have to internalize the way and the perspective. So our degree to which we can be part of this thing is to make ourselves kind of wholly of it, and through the experience of it. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Chapter 2. Once beauty is identified as precious, ugliness is seen everywhere. Once the good is held up to us as an ideal, the commonplace is considered bad. Difficult and easy, long and short, high and low, sound and silence, before and after, each of them are contemporary parts of a bigger unity. But our conditioned minds don't perceive it that way. We drive each aspect as far apart as possible from its complement, and increasingly obsess over the division. Therefore, the sage acts without struggle or coercion, and teaches by example and illusion rather than by rote and rule. Things come and he welcomes them. Things go and he bids them adieu. He helps with no expectation of gain, works with no expectation of reward, performs with no anticipation of results, completes his products but takes no credit. Since he's taking nothing from the world takes nothing from him, and his impact upon the world long endures. So again, I think this is sort of getting to the same idea as before. To see something is to see its opposite, rather than perceive it as part of a complete whole. So when he says beauty is identified as precious, once beauty is identified as precious, ugliness is seen everywhere. Once the good is held at an ideal, commonplace is considered bad. And then he gives other examples and say each of them are complementary as part of a bigger unity. So rather than, there's an idea that every ideal is a judge. Every ideal is a judge. And by having the ideal, we judge ourselves against the ideal. But he argues that it's more of a holistic thing. That it's not that there isn't good and bad. It's just that it is part of a more contemporaneous spectrum. And in an effort to understand it, we simplify it and reduce it down to its binary opposites. But the thing is not binary. And certainly reality itself certainly doesn't really lend itself to a clean separation. Things are more in a holistic harmony than in opposite tension. He also notes that we drive each aspect as far away as possible from its complement and obsess over the division rather than appreciating the entire thing. So we shouldn't be obsessed with beauty to the expense of ugliness, but rather that to understand beauty is to understand ugliness and not separate it out as much. At least that's what I get from it, is that idea. He writes, the sage acts without struggle or coercion. Things come and he welcomes them, things go by and he bids them adieu. So he's living without expectation. He is taking things as they come and as they go. Seasons don't fear the reaper kind of idea, right? The winds and the rains come and the sun shines and he enjoys it all for as long as it lasts, and he doesn't really mind or even notice to some degree that it's leaving. He helps without expectation of gain, works without expectation of reward. Since he takes nothing from the world takes nothing from him. So, because he is in harmony with reality. He doesn't he doesn't he doesn't lose anything of himself because he doesn't hold on to, the moment, and lets the moment just be for itself and lets the moment pass as it passes. He doesn't lose anything from its absence. And he understands everything in its own moment. Chapter 3. Exalting our superiors invites competition. Treasuring things that are difficult to obtain encourages theft. Flaunting objects of desire gives rise to jealousy. So the sage rules by relaxing the people's hearts, satisfying their needs, lessening their wants, and strengthening their character. Once he has shown people how to live without craftiness and envy, cunning interlopers cannot take advantage nor trick them. Living without objective allows us to live in harmony with nature. So, by letting things be and letting them happen, we don't have envy. We don't exalt our superiors, thus creating envy in our own minds. If we treasure things, we encourage theft. To flaunt an object of desire means that you jealously guard it because you're afraid of losing it. And he says that once he's shown people how to live without craftiness and envy, cunning interlopers cannot take advantage nor trick them, because there's nothing to take advantage or trick of, right? Because the person is living, he is a person without envy. He's a person without attachment to things. He lets things be. So a person can't trick or deceive him because he has nothing to be tricked or deceived against. He's living an authentic life. He's not envious of what he doesn't have and jealous of what he does have. He's not afraid. He isn't desirous to, cling on to value, because this idea of the value of what he owns ultimately winds up owning him. To own a thing and guard it is for it to own you, because you're afraid of losing it. And so I think his last line about living without objective allows us to live in harmony with nature is an interesting idea, because if you don't have objective, you don't have envy, because you don't have a idol that you're judging yourself against, or an ideal you're judging yourself against. You're rather harmonious. So, harmony is in tension with striving, because striving is to say that something you lack and something you want, and then if you get it, to want to maintain it. It's an interesting idea. There is a certain idea, at least, about being content in the moment, about being in harmony with things, I think. it's an interesting perspective. Chapter 4. Tao is an empty vessel, yet everything comes from it. Though utterly fathomless, it gives rise to everything we perceive. It smooths sharp edges. It unties the knots. It softens the glare and settles the dirt of daily life. Profoundly patient, it seems to have been around forever. No one knows where it came from. This is because it precedes the world of forms. So this is like, again, pointing to this idea of the duality of ultimate reality. The duality of ultimate reality, like, it reminds me of this idea of like highlighting, it reminds me of this idea of like to highlight everything is to highlight nothing. So in some sense, to have everything is to have nothing, because there's no differentiation. There's no separation. So he says Tao is an empty vessel. Yet everything comes from it because it is in some sense there's nothing there, but everything is there. It is, I think, again, sort of like this idea of like harmony. In the notes, it says, Taoism holds that everything in the universe comes from a place, and then in a footnote it says, though not really a place, since that would suggest dimension. Taoism holds that everything in the universe comes from a place which precedes form and conception. So which, makes sense in sort of, the Big Bang Theory or religious conception, right? Like, the universe emerges from something other than itself. Whether that is, whatever preceded the Big Bang or a deity or something like that. It's like this idea that there's something from beyond that which precedes the material, which is a pretty consistent idea in both science and religious thought. There's something that there's something before the beginning. There's something before the beginning of the universe. There's something before, the beginning of reality as we sort of experience it. And this idea of it smoothing sharp edges, untying knots, softens glares, and settles dirt of daily life. Profoundly patient, it seems to have been around forever. No one knows where it came from. That's because it precedes the worlds of forms. So it is a very sort of metaphysical idea, to be sure. He's trying to address the same thing multiple different ways, right? He's trying to address the same concept from multiple different frames of reference and multiple different perceptions. Because it goes all back to that idea of the Tao is not the Tao. So he's trying to describe something that's beyond description, or that the description would be inadequate. Chapter 5. Nature is unsentimental. It treats the living no differently than it treats debris. Sages are the same. They evaluate everyone impartially. Nature is like a bellows. It is empty, and yet everything springs from it. The more pressure put on, the more it creates. Man is not like this. The more he produces, the more exhausted he becomes. To tap into the Tao, the sage instead turns inward. There he finds its calm and creative source at the very center of his being. So first of all, nature doesn't give a shit about you or anything else. Right? Nature doesn't give a damn that you are living any more than it gives a damn about the dead. Nature is brutal. Right? Nature is brutal. And no matter how much nature creates, it never gets tired. It just keeps creating. It's endless in its output. So he says that man, the more he produces, the more exhausted he becomes. So whatever you're trying to find, when you're trying to find this ultimate reality, trying to find it through external is foolish. Rather, instead, you have to find it from within. Peace comes from within. Peace doesn't come by looking to the external. Peace doesn't come from production. Peace and harmony ultimately come in a more from within. The calmness comes from within. It's not from external things or external sources or external striving. It is from the within. Chapter 6. The fountain of life which never ceases to flow can be thought of as a mysterious sort of womb. The entrance to this profound mother is the origin of the world. Her presence stretches in all directions across all time and space. She seems to give birth without exerting the slightest effort. And again, just like the idea that like nature, that nature produces, but nature isn't conscious, right? So nature creates life, and nature does its thing without tiredness and without any sense of burden. So nature creates without striving or without effort. It is just the fundamental character of nature. Nature and reality persist and just are. Nature is at harmony with itself. Nature doesn't want. Nature doesn't strive. Nature isn't envious. Nature isn't jealous. Nature produces as a fundamental aspect of what it is. And it acts on the world without any sort of care as to what people want or what things want. It just does it. And I think from this, he's using nature as an example. Like, in so much as like nature is not alive, and he doesn't pretend that it is, but he's using it sort of as an idea. Like, nature just is. Nature just is, and it does its thing. It does it without getting tired. It does it without getting burdened. It just goes on endlessly with no problem, and it doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about whether or not you're living or not. It just does its thing. Year after year after century and eons and millennia and ages, it persists. And so I think he's using nature as an exemplar of that. To look from within and to be in harmony isn't necessarily to be without power. That if we are what we fundamentally are meant to be, we may have... There's a difference in his mind, I think, between output and striving for things. You know, he says living without objective allows us to live in harmony with nature, because nature lives without objective. And it strives without burden. So I think he's trying to say that if we just are, we can produce great things, because it will flow naturally from what we are at our essence. So harmony doesn't necessarily mean that we aren't doing work in the world. Harmony doesn't necessarily mean that we aren't creating things. It means that it's effortless. And it is just a natural... It's like breathing. It's like breathing. You just do it and it just happens. I think is what he's talking about. Chapter 7. Why is nature eternal and enduring? Because it does not have any ends. Because it lacks any goals. Nature can never fail to succeed. Understanding this, the sage also refuses to contend or compete. By placing himself in the back, he soon finds himself out front, because he doesn't have any expectation. He doesn't suffer any disappointment. Thus, it's only because he lacks any self-interest that his interests are fulfilled. Again, I think he's pointing to this idea that his interests, his true interests are innate to him, right? His true interests are innate to him. So he doesn't have to think about what his interests are. He doesn't even have to comprehend it. He just is. He just is, in the same way nature just is. So nature, he says, does not have an end because it doesn't have a goal. Nature can never fail to succeed. Nature is not trying to do anything. It just is, and it just is in its aspect. It is what it is. Nature does not have expectation. Nature does not have disappointment. Nature lacks self-interest. But nature's fundamental interest, which is in the nature of what nature is fulfilled. Nature just is, and it just continues to be without effort. And so again, I think he's just trying to say, like, he says the sage refuses to contend or compete. By putting himself out back, he finds himself in the front, because he just is what he is at his nature. He doesn't have to try. He's just rising to whatever is in the moment. The sage doesn't have goals. The sage pursues because it's in his nature to pursue. The sage is at harmony with his own nature. And so it can never be disappointed. Chapter 8. It is best to be like water. Water benefits all things, yet it does not contend nor struggle to do so. Water naturally goes to places shunned by most people. Therefore, water is very similar to the Tao. Because it dwells even in the low places, it's of benefit to all, even the unpopular and rejected. Be like water. Dwell low, close to earth. Penetrate deeply and reflect serenely upon your environment. Benefit and nourish all the things around you. Communicate clearly and faithfully. When taking charge, be appropriate. When serving others, be able. Do not rush or tarry. There's a unique time, rhythm, and speed for every action. The sage does not pit himself against nature. Therefore, he never finds his path obstructed. Water does not concern itself with people's station. It doesn't concern itself with status. Water flows because it's in the nature of water. It just does what it does, and it goes everywhere and does everything. It benefits everyone, even those who are unpopular and rejected. So he suggests rather, that we should be like water, going everywhere our nature would have us go. Which can include taking charge, but be appropriate. Which can include serving others, but be able. And then he notes not to rush or tarry. There's unique time, rhythm, and speed. So just the water does not rush or tarry. Water neither speeds up nor delays. It does its thing in its own time, and it's always sort of sufficient. I think is what he's talking about. Chapter 9. Man is oriented toward excess, but greed puts a strain on systems, destroying them. An over-sharpened blade will be broken. An overflowing vault will be vanquished. An overvalued ego will be brought down. Do what is necessary, take what you need, and then get out of the way. This is the efficient way in which nature operates. So he points out that you should do what your nature would require, but if you try to do more than that, you'll wind up defeating yourself. A blade is useful if sharp, but if over sharp, it will break and not be useful. A vault is useful for storing things, but if it's overflowing, it can't serve its nature. A person with an inflated ego can be brought down. So he's not denying the importance of the ego. He's saying that, again, it's just about an issue of harmony. Do what is required or necessary, take what you need, and then get out of the way. Because that's what nature does. Nature does what it needs to do and then stops. Right? Nature only needs to do as much as it needs to do for as long as it needs to do it, because it's in its fundamental aspect. So, to be in harmony with yourself. Chapter 10. Can you embrace both the abstract and the concrete and see them as two sides of the same oneness? This should sound very familiar, right? From earlier. About the duality of things, right? And so appreciate things as a more of a contemporaneous spectrum. Can you embrace both the abstract and the concrete and see them as two sides of the same oneness? This will help you maintain integrity and avoid internal contradiction. Meditating upon and substituting your internal energy allows you to become as pure and receptive as a newborn. Examining your perceptions of the world allows you to cleanse them of dust and distortion. Identifying with people over whom you have influence prevents from becoming distracted by your own self-interest. As temptations avail themselves to you, can you remain steadfast as a mother's bird in her nest? As you grow wise and knowledgeable about many things, can you retain the modesty of an amateur? Both Tao and the sage nurture the people, without assuming ownership of them. They act without expecting a result and lead without controlling. Human beings call this virtue. It's the very embodiment of the Tao. Tao manifests itself via the human heart. So, by focusing inward and by focusing on inner peace and by inner value, again, it's this idea of preventing external corruption. Meditating upon and using your inner energy allows you to become pure and receptive as a newborn. The sage nurtures people without assuming ownership. They act without expecting results, lead without controlling. Human beings call this a virtue. And then there's this line about growing wise and knowledgeable and retaining the modesty of an amateur. I like to think I embody at least a part of this myself. And I'd like to think I embody at least part of this. Trying to be wise and knowledgeable, but retaining modesty as amateur. Trying to nurture by having this channel without assuming ownership. It's also a injunction towards self-awareness. It's an injunction towards inner reflection, I think. We can talk a little bit in chat for a minute now that we've read the first 10 chapters of this great philosophical work. So how are you all doing? This is definitely one of the more, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting book because it's really like, it toes that line between like saying a lot and like being like, you know, the wisdom that you might get like smoking a joint, right? It's like it's like the wisest thing is the same thing as the most foolish thing or something like that, you know. Something someone might say, you know, when they're high toking on a joint is something that the most complex philosopher might say. And so there's a little bit of irony in that, I suppose, that one of the most complex pieces of literature ever is also like it strikes you as the kind of like simplistic wisdom or something. But I really feel like there's something here. I really feel like there's something here. I mean, there's reasons that it's, other than the Bible, the most translated book ever written. It's trying to say something that's pretty important. My back is feeling fine, thank you. The stuff I put on my back earlier seems to be working very nicely. Thank you for asking. It's been a while since I've read this, and I wanted to chill and hang out with you guys, and I thought, we could read it together. It would be fun. Should we read some more? This is a lot. It's a lot. Chapter 11. A wheel is fashioned from spokes, yet it's the emptiness at its hub which allows it to function. A bowl is molded from clay, yet it's the hollowness at its center which allows it to be used. A house is structured from timber and stone, yet it's the empty space within that affords its value. Therefore, although presence provides property, empty space affords utility. That's just kind of clever. Right? It's the empty spaces that allow something to be useful. Mountain Princess says, I have no idea why we're here. Well, as the title says, we are reading and discussing the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. One of the great works of philosophy ever written, as far as I'm concerned. And have I checked my mail recently? Not since last weekend, I don't think. I got a package today or yesterday, so I need to go there. But not since last week. But I usually go about once a week. Chapter 12. Too much light blinds the eye. Too much sounds deafens the ear. Too much spice blunts the taste. Too much excitement maddens the mind. Too much desire compromises the character. This is why the sage needs to put his inner needs first, by moderating the external distractions of the senses. So just moderation. You know what's funny about the great works of philosophy allows for others not to think about it for themselves? I don't think that's fair. I don't really think that's fair. Philosophy is the best wisdom that has been put in place by other people. And I don't think it means that you don't have to think for yourself, because there's still a lot of it out there. Like, there's still a lot of things that you could read from, and still a lot of things you could understand. So, Chapter 13. The sage says, both praise and blame induce anxiety, for honors are fleeting and fickle. We indulge our anxieties because they safeguard the self. It seems that consternation may be a condition of consciousness. However, for those who regard themselves as part of a much greater whole, Praise and blame no longer elicit unease. Undivided from the environment, they care about the world as much as they care about themselves. This is why it is only those who see themselves as ordinary who may be fit to influence the world, and only those immune to honor who actually deserve it. Chapter 14. You can look, but it cannot be seen. You can listen, but it cannot be heard. You can grasp, but it cannot be touched. When something is incapable of being sensed or categorized or measured in this way, it's because it's not a thing. It's an undifferentiated field of potential. It is neither light nor dark, high nor low, up nor down. Rather, its process prefigures the very division of opposites, and thus it's impossible to define. It emerges only to vanish again and again. We might consider it a formula for the uninformed, an illustration of the undefined, an outline on ambiguity. Don't try to examine it directly. You won't make heads or tails of it. Rather, practice abiding in the path of Tao in the here and now. In doing this, you share the momentum. An unimpeded unfolding. What started back at the beginning of things. So I guess this is just kind of a repetition of chapter 1 in some ways. Like, the Tao that can be talked about is not the Tao. You can look, but you can't see it. You can listen, but you can't hear it. You can grasp it, but you can't touch it. It can't be perceived in the normal sense of things. And even if you could, the perception would not be the same as the reality. The perception is distinct from the reality. So again, it's not something to be examined, but rather something to be experienced. It's not, don't overthink it, which is ironic, I suppose, in this book. You know, so Chapter 15. The ancient sages were masters of making their way in the world. Since we can scarcely comprehend the depths of their understanding, all we can do is reflect on their outworld attitude. Careful like a man crossing a frozen stream. Vigilant like someone surrounded on all sides by a threat. Courteous like an honored guest. Yielding like thawing ice. Unassuming like uncarved wood. Receptive like an empty valley. Yet incomprehensible as a turbid pool. Muddy water once settled becomes clear, and settled water once again becomes agitated. He who can remain constant and avoid the vicissitudes of excess, avoid becoming buffeted by changing currents, naturally cleaves to the path which cuts right through. It's just a basically, again, an injunction towards harmony. And it just is basically an injunction for harmony. Chapter 16. Maintain a perfect stillness, and you witness everything arising from the quietude. Rising and falling like your breath, everything without fail returns to the void. When you're able to see that everything returns to the void, you will have gained insight into the human condition. Prior to obtaining this insight, you're under constant risk of compulsive behavior, and compulsive behavior can ruin your life. When you attain this insight into the nature of things, you will learn to embrace the entire world. By embracing the entire world, you become profoundly unbiased. By being profoundly unbiased, you'll become deeply selfless. By being deeply selfless, you'll enter the natural stream of the Tao, and the Tao takes care of its own. You know, if you ever sat in complete silence, especially if you take active steps to notice, it's a good exercise, by the way. Do it sometime. When you do it sometime, sit somewhere where it's quiet. Close your eyes and actively try to pay attention to everything that you can see and hear. Well, not so much see, but hear. You know, the little noises, your own breath, your own heartbeat. You know, the things the sensation of sitting down, something you wouldn't normally notice. You know, you don't normally notice the sensation of sitting down. You don't normally really notice the sensation of the chair, you know, on your legs or your back or your butt. You don't normally notice the sound of the air current or the air conditioning or the little hum of a thing or the little sensations, the little noises. So it's an interesting experience to get really silent and then really pay attention to everything. And notice the things that you are otherwise missing. He says that when you do this, you gain insight into the human condition. By embracing the entire world, you become unbiased. You become selfless and enter the stream of the Tao. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, Human Descartes are great. And as you guys know, I'm a fan of Immanuel Kant. Also Aristotle. The Socratic method, of course, famous for lawyers in particular. There's lots of great philosophers. It enriches the mind and makes you think. And it's just, something I thought we'd read today because I thought it was interesting. There's lots of great stuff out there. And certainly, I think there's a lot of truth in this. There's a lot of truth in a lot of philosophy. Because it's meant to explore what wisdom has to offer. Paragraph 16. We read that. Chapter 17. The greatest rulers are barely known. The next best are admired. The next best are feared. The next best are loathed. And stronger the feelings, the weaker the trust. And those who cannot trust cannot be governed. Thus, the best rulers make no credit for their achievement. That makes the people feel they have governed themselves. Yeah. Right? Like the best leader is probably the one that's not well known. Right? It's like, because they're not striving for fame, they're just striving to lead. And that's enough. Chapter 18. When the people abandon the Tao, doctrines of morality and rectitude take its place. Once intellect and knowledge are esteemed, hypocrisy and pretense become routine. As family relations become strained, we start to hear a lot about the importance of kinship. And it's only when the whole political system is in trouble that the minister starts preaching about patriotic loyalties. So I think this is just a desire to I think it's just basically an injunction for balance at this. Chapter 19. To help humanity spurn holiness, discard cleverness, abandon the doctrine of kindness, and relinquish the moral duty. After rejecting these external injunctions, a natural piousness and compassion will be allowed to flourish. Moreover, if we disregard academic knowledge and spurn ceremony, we'll be freed from anxiety over status and distress over details. Furthermore, when we root out artifice and banish profiteers, hustlers and thieves will be obliged to find their targets elsewhere. However, these are just outward policies. Within ourselves, we must also come to value the unadorned, embrace simplicity, reduce self-consciousness, and curtail craving. This, again, is just an injunction, basically, to look from within. And the last one I'll read right now is chapter 20, because I think that's enough for today. Abandon learning, it brings only sorrow. What is good and what is bad? Must I fear what others fear? The limit to our ignorance is endless. Yet there's an endless joy to be had. The world is like a great spring fest. I take in the views from high all above it, calm, alone, and expressionless as an unborn infant, with nothing to do and nowhere to go. The people indulge in an abundance of wealth, while I appear to have nothing. The people are sharp and clear-minded, whereas I seem confused. The people are confident and assertive, but I look dull and withdrawn. The people are gainfully employed, yet I remain stubbornly idle. My mind is foolish, indeed rather vulgar. Aimless as the restless winds, I seem to have no direction at all. I suppose I'm rather different from everyone else, yet I'm content. Everything I need is right here. Again, I think this is just kind of like an injunction that the true happiness comes from within and not in external things. And I think that's enough for now. But I thought I'd share this with you. Have I read The Unbreakable Lightness of Being Million Someone? No, I can't say I have. We're going to sit here and just drink for a while. You know, I don't know that he's necessarily right, but I still find it a very interesting work of philosophy. You know, I find it a very interesting work of philosophy to add to the list. You know, he's, I think, one of the great thinkers of all time. And I think it's a philosophy that there's some, you know, there's some truth in that, you know. I think what I would most say for me, the thing that I most get out of it, and the thing I think is most true about it, is that we all should be who we are. Is the book still in print? The Tao Te Ching? Yeah, it's in print. It's very in print. Very, very in print. I think what can most be said for it and what's most true is that we should be our most authentic selves. And the authentic self, I think, also speaks deeper to more permanent conceptions of what we are. Like your feelings in the moment Your feelings in the moment are not the same as what you are. Like, I don't think I am my depression. You know, my expression of my depression is an authentic depression. It's authentic, but it's not like fundamentally who I am. Right? Who I am is, it's also not an expression of the needs of the moment. It's not an expression of wants or desires of the moment. It's an expression of more innateness. And I think what can be most said for it is that what can be best said for it, at least for me, is that it's an injunction to be the best versions of our real authentic self. And allow our desires to flow from within rather than from external, rather from external. Like, I shouldn't want a car because it's an external thing, right? It should come from within, right? I shouldn't look to the external thing to make me happy, right? I don't think the real goals and the real authentic goals come from real innate character traits. You know, they come from innate aspects of what we fundamentally are. And so I think it's an injunction to be the best version of ourselves, I think, is what they're talking about. And I think that's a pretty good conception, you know, regardless of your religious belief. And also to be in harmony with to be internally harmonious is ideally to be one's best version of oneself. And so I don't really personally consider it a religious text as much as a philosophical text. And you can certainly see elements from this in religious text. To the extent you consider it a religious text, you can certainly see elements of this in other religious texts as well. Like, there's a lot of these same ideas in other religious texts, which kind of makes sense because they speak to like the most innate ideas about, you know, what we are and what we're supposed to be. It's good stuff. You think it's spiritual, not religious? It's spiritual only in so much as it's trying to speak to what's deepest within us, which I'm not sure is necessarily spiritual, but maybe it is. Hello, composer. How are you? Thank you for the dab. The food turned out good, by the way, for those of you who missed it. Recommended. Why am I not doing a more natural surrounding? Why, I want to do it here. What's the problem? That'd only be looking to external to like, you know, that'd only be looking to the external to This is where I am. Nice green ambient lighting, yeah. It's a nice little lighting we've got going on here. You guys know how I have my home set up, right? Got the green lighting on top there. And then I've got blue lighting below and red behind. And we got Eeyore there. Clemson. Supreme Court certificate. YouTube button. I did go to Clemson. No, I didn't go to Clemson. That's why I have a Clemson thing on my... Yeah, of course I went to Clemson. Just giving you a hard time. SC State is better than Clemson? In what universe? They're better than Clemson in what respect? Like, at all. What's Clemson? Clemson is a university in South Carolina. Clemson was founded by Thomas Green Clemson, who gave his property to the state on condition that a university be established there. And in the 19th century. MD Terp there, you're a turtle? What I have for dinner? The same thing I had earlier, the pizza casserole. You don't have a degree yet, you're wealthy beyond your own expense. Okay, that's cool. You're still in awe of my masterful recalling of Hawaii Housing Authority? Thank you. Smoked pizza is good? Yeah, I respect that. I respect that. I need a shower. I feel very clammy. Do I like the Iliad and Odyssey? They're fine. I haven't read them since, high school or undergrad or something, but is it humid? It feels like it, that's for sure. $18.89, that's right. $18.89, that's right. Clemson is a public university. It's a good school. I had fun going there. I miss it. Wouldn't mind being a teacher there. That'd be cool. They don't have a law school though. But I guess I could teach pre-law or something. Ever thought about being a professor? Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I don't know how to go about doing that though. I don't know how to go about becoming a professor. I really don't. I don't know how you would go about doing that. I suppose if I want to become a law professor, I have to start writing some academic articles. What was my favorite undergrad course? Maybe political science. One of my political science courses. You're adding a vet school to Clemson? I did not know that. That's cool. It feels very, very humid in here. It feels very clammy. I don't know how to go about becoming a professor. I don't really know. You know, when I looked into like before for law professors, I gotta start writing academic articles and stuff. What's my favorite book? Um, hmm, I want to say 1984. I mean, it's the book I read the most. I haven't read it since high school, but like in high school, I don't know why, but I was obsessed with 1984. I was like reading it and just reading it and rereading it throughout like my entire senior year. I don't know, I must have read the book like 50 times. Um, how am I doing? I've been a little bit depressed today. Did I like Catch 22? I never read it. So if any of you guys happen to know, like any deans at any colleges or anything who wants to give me a job offer, let me know. There's 100 of you in chat. Maybe one of you knows someone who knows someone. So if you want Uncivil Law to be a professor, you can help me out. Would I work for Twitter? Maybe. You've taught at various levels, just apply. Just throw in resumes. Just throw in resumes. Have I considered teaching for Bronca? Bronca didn't offer. Bronca didn't offer me. I couldn't say why. I would have taught constitutional law, but he had someone else in mind for that. So I don't know. Maybe Bronca doesn't want me for his project. Maybe Bronca doesn't think I'm a very good teacher, which is disappointing, but you know. I should be on the bench? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I haven't been a lawyer long enough in Texas to get to the bench yet. I think I have to be a lawyer for 4 years before I can be a lawyer, be a judge. I'm only interested in accredited universities. Has one become a judge in Texas by being elected? In Virginia by being appointed? They haven't appointed me either. I still have a license in Virginia. If they want to appoint me. I need a massage. That's what I need in my life. I need a massage. I need a shower and I need a massage. And a hot tub of some kind. I need to rewrite my CV or something. I don't want to sign off. I'm kind of down. I don't want to sign off. Today's is just a day where the depression is. Today's a day where the depression is hitting me a little bit harder. You know, some days, man. Some days. And, you know, I feel like depression is just hitting me harder today. I do need to talk. That's why I'm still here. I do need to talk. Is philosophy my favorite topic to read? Maybe. You know what's interesting is I never took a philosophy class in college, which is kind of ironic. I kind of wish I had. I kind of wish I had like majored in it. I got a degree in political science. Kind of wish I had my degree had been in philosophy. That'd been cool. Because I found out I liked it a lot better afterwards. I never took a philosophy class. I was too busy doing political science and law. So all the philosophy I kind of did on my own time. Tell you a story about Austin? Austin's a cool town. It's it's got a lot of development going on right now. A lot of people moving here. A lot of companies are moving here. Like when I go downtown, it's like how many cranes can I spot today is usually the question. Because there's usually so many that are running. So it's a booming town at the moment. It's got a really interesting music district, 6th Street. It's like Bourbon Street or Beale Street in Memphis or New Orleans. Like bar after bar after bar after bar. Great music scene. A little bit rowdy in the evenings for sure. The state capitol is really impressive. It's made out of this like marble from this local quarry. It's got kind of like a pink tint to it because of the marble. It's a really cool building. I sometimes wonder if I have failed in socially, you know? I sometimes wonder if I have failed in my relations with other people, you know? You know, you can only be rejected by so many people for so long before you begin to wonder if you're the problem, you know? I don't think that I failed in my social awareness, failed in my social skills. Empty Sandman says if there's a problem, solve it. Check out the hook while the DJ revolves it. As depression talking could be, yeah. All I know, all I know is that there's some guys who bounce from girl to girl and can get any girl to sleep with them and have 5 different numbers they can call at any time and are spinning plates, as they like to say, in the manosphere. And none of those girls are wanting me. So something's wrong with this equation. How many of you just learned a phrase? Spinning plates. How many of you knew that phrase? Did I teach you guys something? Wasn't it on Laugh-In? Oh, I don't know. That's an old show. Never heard that before? Excellent. And some of you have heard it, some of you have not. I've heard it, but not about juggling people. Spinning plates. I read it all, baby. I read it all. There are a lot of women who'd like to know me. That is not my experience. I have to be honest, there are not a lot of women who are knocking at my door. Not a lot of women who are sending me emails. Not a lot of women who... And the last woman I had sent me an email. It was the most bizarre thing. I still don't completely understand what the hell happened. I have a woman, sometimes someone will send me an email. Every once in a while. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while someone will. And so this woman sent me an email from Dallas. And she sends me an email on like a Sunday. This is a couple weeks ago. And the email is literally titled application. It's literally titled application. And, you know, it includes like a brief bio and a picture of her. And she's cute. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So, you know, we chat very briefly on email. And I'm like, what's your number? She gives me her number. And we're texting. And we're like flirting back and forth. And like, so 2 days later, like on Tuesday, I'm like, you know, because we've been texting a little bit. I'm like, well, let's talk tonight. Let's talk on the phone. And she's like, you know, well, I just want, you know, I'm not sure that will work because I'm going out with friends. And so I say, okay, well, how about tomorrow? And she says, well, just to let you know, I'm seeing some other people. And I say, well, you know, that's fine, obviously, you know, at this point, because, you know, we are literally just talking right now. You know, we haven't even met. You know, I wouldn't expect a serious commitment, you know, until we had a couple dates. You know, I wouldn't expect a serious commitment a couple dates. So, I mean, obviously, you know, you might be seeing other people. I mean, you just met me. And so, you know, I wouldn't expect a serious commitment until we're in a couple dates. And she sends me back, well, you know, she says something like, and she uses the dreaded word. She says, you know, well, you know, I don't know if that will work out, and I hope we can remain friends. And so I send her back, I'm like, you know, friends, because I said, friends is a very charged word in this context. I was like, I'm not interested in friendship, I'm interested in a romantic partner. She's like, well, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. And I'm like, well, why did you send me an application in the first place? And why'd you send me an application in the first place if you didn't want to have a relationship? I was like, well, I just, you know, decided to change my mind. I'm like, 2 days later, man, what's up with this? You know, so the whole thing was very, very bizarre. The whole thing was very, very bizarre. To me. It didn't make any sense. And catfish is a possibility. I saw someone in chat suggested catfished. I had asked her to send me a selfie, you know, because she had sent me a picture. And I'm like, well, this may or may not be you, so can you send me a selfie? She sent me a selfie, and it was the same person. So I'm like, okay. So I don't know if it was a catfish. I don't know what the hell was going on. It was very, very weird. It was very, very weird. She got cold feet? But, like, why? Why? It doesn't make any sense. You once got sea bassed? Yeah. I mean, her email to me literally said application. It literally said application. And like 2 days later, it's like, I just want to, you know. So I don't know what's all that about. But, you know, it was disappointing, but, you know, not that big a deal because she never had my real phone number. I gave her a burner number. So if she was trying to, like, get my phone number because she's a catfish or something and was trying to get my phone number to, like, harass me, oops. Because as soon as, like, she's like, we're out, I burned the number. So it doesn't exist. I didn't give out my real phone number. I gave a burner. Think ahead. Well, thank you, Empty Sandman. That's very nice. Don't date in ways that require you to have a burner. In this day and age, man, I'm not sure there is such a thing. You know, in this day and age, I'm not sure there is such a thing, you know? When you meet someone online and you don't know who they are, you know, I'm not sure there is such a thing anymore. You know? So, I'm going to be protective and proactive. You know? You know, eventually I would have given her my real number, you know, after we met a couple times and stuff like that. But, you know, when first starting out a relationship, you know, I gave her a burner number. You never date online but do date? Well, good for you, Christopher. I have problems meeting people in the real world, but maybe that's because I'm not as good as pickup at you. And despite my best efforts, I have been unable to learn. So, we do what we can. What's my favorite movie genre? I don't know. I really want to see the new Mission Impossible movie, I guess. What's the Austin dating scene like? I don't know. I haven't been able to find people to date, personally. There was one girl in my improv class I was interested in, but she was Jewish and she wanted to date people that were Jewish faith, which I understood. So, you know, I asked if we could get together and she said no, and I respected that. I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. I've heard good things, though. I hope to meet someone through my channel, you know, to be honest. You know, this is more exposure. There's 128 of you in this chat room right now. This is more people than I'd meet in any bar. It's like, you know, hopefully one day I'll just meet somebody. I worked for Learn French. I'm too fat, man. I'm way too fat. We gotta keep working on the weight thing. Look at how much fat I have, man. That's not good. That's what the ladies don't want this. This is no good. We gotta keep going to the gym and keep getting buff. Weight isn't the issue. Meetup, I've done Meetup a lot. Is it that I'm balding? Is it that I'm old? Is it that I'm not particularly wealthy? I'm intelligent, kind, I cook, I can do laundry, take care of myself, I have a successful YouTube channel, I go to the gym, do improv classes. I'd like to think I have a lot going for me. I'm a bit sharp. I guess I can be a bit sharp sometimes, that's fair. Just flow. Cute. We're trying to just flow, man. I stopped looking and met my wife. Okay. Just a bit. When I'm upset, it's scary. Okay. I'll try to reflect upon that. I'll try to reflect upon that and see if I can become less sharp, less acerbic. You think I'm a nice guy, a bit old for you, and on the market, but still was. Okay. Let's see if I can do something about the sharpness. Sometimes I lose my temper, become exasperated. I'm not violent. I've never hit anybody. Do you think, are you worried that I'd be violent? Is that the problem? Sharp is fine, but sharp directed one of my silly comments would definitely be an issue in real life. So maybe we're more sensitive to that. Violent words can still feel like violence in the right situation. Okay. Well, I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. I'm interested in dating, so I'll work on it. If it's a problem in dating, I'll work on it. I'm not different with you guys than I would be in any other situation. I'm pretty much the same person, more or less. So if it's a problem in dating, then it's a problem in all contexts, and I'll try to fix it. What's my ideal woman? I'm hesitant to answer the question because every time I answer the question, people tell me I'm wrong. But I'll answer the question anyway. I'm looking for someone who's under the age of 35, preferably never been married, definitely doesn't have children, would like children. I would like someone who is, relatively pretty, because like many men, I'm attracted to beauty, and I like someone who's, pretty. I like someone, that I'm physically attracted to. Um, I'd like someone who prefers, probably is a little bit more introverted, a little bit more quiet. Um, Someone who doesn't always want to go out all the time, because I don't want to go out all the time. And I'd much rather be at home most of the time. So I prefer someone who leans introvert. Um, it would be helpful if she's intelligent, so that we can have a meaningful conversation. Um, Non-smoker, no drugs. Clean. Loyal. Someone who's loyal. Someone who's kind. Christopher House says perfection is the enemy of the good. Okay, well, I apologize for expressing what I wanted then. I was obviously wrong. I don't know why I bother. Every time I express what I want, I'm told I'm wrong. Every single time. I don't know why I bother. Kind is very hard to come by. Is it? Are people that are kind really that rare? If I tried using a matchmaker, I'm not sure which one I would use that would be any good. Do you have any recommendations for ones that would be reliable? Which matchmaking service I should use? What activities do I enjoy doing? I like going to wineries, distilleries, breweries. I like doing live music, but not like professional concerts. Tend to like smaller, more intimate settings, like bars or restaurants or things like that. I like improv. Um, I like doing comedy shows. Uh, YouTube, of course, although that's my job now, that takes a lot of time. Social media. Um, like reading occasionally, watching movies. Um, I'm a sucker for fine dining. I'm a sucker for good service at a restaurant. You don't think I'm trying to let it happen? You don't think I'm trying to let it happen? Is that being too sharp? I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to respond that way. I apologize. That was too sharp a response. You're right. I'll just sit by and try to let it happen. Thank you for the advice. Any physiological activities? I've been going to the gym a lot. As I mentioned, I've been enjoying working out recently, going to the gym. I like pistol shooting, although I haven't been in a while. What about Ozempic? Uh, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to take a shower. It's 9 o'clock. I might go to bed. I'm tired. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.